It's not paranoia, nor is it a victim peddling mentality that causes millions of Black people throughout the diaspora to conclude that we're being treated differently across all social media platforms than any other racial groups are treated. The circulations of our postings are clearly being impeded and restricted. Many studies have been done proving this to be true. Therefore, data exists. All you have to do is do an internet search of those data to find them, finding evidence proving that Black people are the most shadow banned group on all social media platforms. The truth of the matter is that there are white oppressive forces that are actively working against our collective awakening. And the reason for doing so is rooted in our hidden history. Many Black people are asking the same questions of why are we being, posters being so shadow banned? Why is this happening? The reason why most Black people are baffled is because most Black people don't have an accurate understanding of the present relationship that's actually shared now between ourselves and the Western world. The reason why most Black people are unaware of this present underlying relationship is because in order to possess an understanding, we would first have to know true history. History tells the people what their current situation is. History is like a clock that tells the people their geographical time of the day. History gives people the basis to make accurate, concrete, and sound interpretations of their current events. Because Black people were not taught true history, most therefore don't have a mental reference of the present existence that exists between ourselves and the Western society. This is because Black people were taught a whitewashed version of history that makes the Western world appear lesser immoral and more humane throughout history than they truly in fact were. It has also been whitewashed to conceal many facts in order to make the Western world's brutal mistreatments and exploitation of us throughout history appear as having been justified and or have benefited us. White historians also cannot teach true Black history to Black people because to do so, they would have to admit that they interrupted the great history of Black people. They also can't teach true Black history because doing so refutes the myth of white racial superiority over Black people, which is necessary in order for the white society to maintain its social dominance and social capital over its Black population. Such as, for example, the white society can't teach the truth that long before the Europeans invaded Africa, that it was Africans that civilized Europe. This includes even introducing the daily bath to Europeans. They also can't teach true history because it would reveal that Caucasians have been the most brutally immoral enemies of we Africans throughout history. Furthermore, it revealed the immense debt that the white world truly owes we Africans. Because of these noted facts, Black people were never taught true history. Therefore, most Black people don't have a mental reference of the current relationship that's presently shared between our racial group and the Western world. Most importantly, because of these noted facts, Black people don't have a mental reference point of where to start our liberation. I realize that all of what I've just stated might sound very complicated. So please allow me to explain what it means in a more simple manner. Imagine that you're driving a pickup truck down a long, winding road and you hit a huge bump. And when you hit the bump, you didn't notice that something valuable fell from your truck. Then after driving for an additional 10 miles, you stopped and only then realized that the object had fallen from your truck. By having a mental reference where you hit that bump in the road, you can then return to that point to find what had fallen from your truck. But without that memory and mental reference point, finding what fell from your truck will become extremely difficult. This is why knowing true history is important. Likewise, the white society has never taught true history, the true history of what they've actually done to our ancestors. They haven't taught it to us. And this is by deliberate design. Because they know that gaining that foundational knowledge will provide us with the mental reference that will eventually lead to us developing the proper counter strategies required in order to liberate ourselves. This is proven from a quote within a speech presented in 1832 to the U.S. founding fathers Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and Abraham Lincoln by Henry Berry of the Virginia House of Delegates. He said, "We have as far as possible closed all avenue by which the light of truth may enter the minds of the Negroes. If we can extinguish their capacity to see any light of truth, our work will be complete. They would then be on the level of the beasts of the fields, and we then should be safe, and we can then rule over them forever." The white society doesn't want us to ever gain any truths that can eventually lead to us liberating ourselves. It's why whenever we attempt sharing any Black liberating information on social media platforms, Facebook blocks it, Twitter deletes it, Google hides it, YouTube bans it, the media censors it, and the white government forbids it. They even determine what contents are allowed to go viral. Information with the potential to awaken the Black masses are heavily restricted, while all other contents that keeps our collective minds dumbed down and distracted to the benefit of our oppressors are actually pushed to go viral. We're now mentally lost and confused today because we've never been taught true history. Therefore, we don't have a mental reference point to start our liberation. And then to further confuse us, white oppressive forces have fed lots of disinformation into our communities regarding our plight and condition. Our communities are in fact drowning in disinformation. We now have a segment claiming to be the true Jews of an easily proven as being fictional Bible written by our most ungodly enemies. That makes no sense at all. We also now have a segment claiming to be the true indigenous Americans, although countless millions of us have taken DNA analysis that have scientifically confirmed our African identity. Those results have scientifically proven that we are in fact Africans. And we also have those claiming that our collective minds are being controlled by a silly slave syndrome myth. That myth presents what would in fact be the least effective and least plausible method used for controlling generations of millions of people. It's simply not how true brainwashing is achieved. And then we have the most naive, gullible, and the most mentally enslaved among us that ridiculously believe that we made the N-word ours, and that even more ridiculously, that using it now empowers us. Because they've colonized our minds to prefer being holy rather than being critical thinkers, we are therefore easy victims of their fraudulent disinformation propaganda campaigns. Fortunately, throughout generations, our ancestors have always provided us with those they have given a spiritual insight and innate ability to see through the maze of lies and confusion which our enemies have designed for us. Those of us that have been blessed by our ancestors with this gift of spiritual insight must teach the truth to those of us that remains mentally enslaved by the white society. Those who know must teach. African proverb. The truth is, unlike at the conclusion of World War II, when the less than 12-year Jewish Holocaust came to an end, and the U.S. government and the UN contributed massive financial support to rebuild and restore their lives, there was no moral obligation to do the same for we Africans. Although the African Holocaust lasted hundreds of years longer and resulted in millions of more death and more greatly decimated the African culture, when slavery was abolished, America, Great Britain, and many other white nations that benefited from their brutal exploitation of we Africans felt no moral obligation to restore our lives and our culture. They instead focused on their own self-interest. To protect the white society from massive unified black retribution, especially given that the white society's exploitation of Africans globally and exploitation of Africa's natural resources continues indefinitely, the white oppressive forces instead socialized Africans. Socialized is when the oppressors exploits their monopoly over information that are systematically and repetitively fed into the collective minds of the oppressed, to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are against their own self-interest and in ways that instead serves the interests of the oppressors. Throughout history, those empires that were brutally oppressive, fearing eventual retribution from the oppressed, have always socialized the minds of the oppressed to think in ways that prevents acts of retribution. It's actually a hidden, commonly deployed historical practice. The oppressors always exploits their monopoly over the information that are fed into the minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways benefiting their oppressors. Therefore, the beliefs and perceptions held by the oppressed are never truly their own. There are always falsehoods that are beneficial to the oppressors that were covertly socialized into the collective minds of the oppressed by their oppressors without the oppressed even knowing it. Those that have been socialized rarely, if ever, learn of this fact. This is all possible because regardless of how intelligent people are, if it's possible to control the input of information that are fed into the human mind, it's entirely possible to control what people will believe. This nefarious practice was never abandoned. To our own detriment, this is precisely what the white society has done to we Africans. We've been stripped of our history, culture, spiritual traditions, and knowledge of ourselves, and have instead been socialized to think and behave in ways that serve to protect the system of white supremacy. It's the true reason why millions of us now think in ways beneficial to the white society and in ways that are against our own. More specifically, it's why millions of us now perceive ourselves as being our worst enemies and reveres our oppressors in spite of a brutally horrific history to the contrary. It's always by design when the oppressed thinks exactly the way the oppressor wants them to think. To the white society's monopoly over information, which allows them to control what we believe, they've socialized our minds. The African slaves of the 21st century are the ones who cannot overcome their socialized minds. Many have misdiagnosed our collective condition as being the Stockholm Syndrome. However, the absolute truth is that Black people have been deliberately socialized by the white society. It's how the white society protects itself from massive unified Black retribution. During the 1960s unprecedented unified Black protests, it was determined that the socializing of the minds of Black people had to be reinforced daily and unrelentingly. So it's now being deployed through unrelenting daily media subliminal propaganda programming. The white society's unrelenting negative depiction of Black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality is designed to demoralize us, divide us, create self-loathing. And it also creates Black self-hatred, which attacks the core foundation with bonds as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. It's time to know the truth, and I've just told you the truth. It's time to stop being mentally enslaved. Stop therefore acting as wardens of your own mental prison. That is the truth that you need to know. That is the truth we need to make our mental reference based upon to develop the proper strategies that are necessary to free ourselves. It's time to wake up. The awakening is upon us. One love and peace.